Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello. How's it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far, or a wonderful week. If you're listening to this on Thursday, well, happy Thursday. You're almost to the weekend. I hope the sun is shining. I hope you're feeling good. I know there's a lot of chaos and craziness in our world right now, but I am back with more positive, feel-good stories to share with you, and I'm super excited to be here and sharing these stories. So let's just jump right into it. So as we know, of course, the pandemic has closed so many businesses across the world. So many people have been out of work, or their businesses have shut down, or they're in struggles to make ends meet. Well, I thought I would share this story of this man from New Jersey who has kind of made quite the adjustment to his career, I guess. So his name is Craig Daly, and he actually, one of his part-time jobs is delivering newspapers over the past 25 years. So he's the owner of a New Jersey frame shop, and of course he hasn't been able to operate that business. And then so he's been delivering some newspapers for quite some long time. And so what his, that part-time job has turned into more of his immediate income, right? But he kind of turned that delivering newspapers into something even more incredible and something even way better than this to help out others. So it hasn't stopped him from, he has taken over 500 trips to the grocery store for free for seniors that are staying at home to avoid exposure to coronavirus. So, he's quite regular with making his deliveries. He wakes up at 4 a.m. every morning to deliver his newspapers. And now that has obviously become his main source of income. But now he's finding this as a new, innovative way to be more generous. So this all began for him when an 88-year-old woman that was on his route, basically she asked him to throw the newspaper closer to the door so that she wouldn't have to walk too far to get it. So he originally just obliged to it and without thinking too much of the request. And then a few days later, he was in line at the grocery store and he just thought of the woman again. And he goes, if she can't walk 20 feet to get her newspaper, how is she getting groceries? So this thought popped into his head. So he decided to call her and just see if she needed anything. And she was extremely grateful for his request. And so she asked him to pick up one small order for her and one for a neighbor that was across the street as well. So this is where he got the idea that there must be hundreds of seniors that are having a hard time getting to the grocery store. And so he decided to offer up his services, and he attached a note to the newspapers that he was delivering. And it's basically, he says, I hope this note finds you well. My name is Craig Daly. I deliver your newspaper every morning. I understand during these times it's difficult for someone to get out of their house to get everyday necessities. I would like to offer my services free of charge to anyone who needs groceries, household products, etc. I will be shopping at ShopRite and McCaffrey's and can deliver the goods directly to your front door. If you would like to partake in the service, please send your detailed list, including specific sizes and quantities, brands, to my email, and here's my phone number, and along any questions that you might have. So this note turned out to be an enormous hit. He got so many responses back, and so many people needed help. So it actually turned into a huge thing that his wife, his 3 children, and his mother-in-law started helping out with it with any chance that they could, answering phone calls, taking shopping trips of their own. His daughter, Erin, she is quite tech savvy. She decided to create a spreadsheet system for him to keep track of all the orders, write down the discount codes for each customer. He does his best to try to coordinate with people through email and phone, but he actually still accepts notes on the doors of customers who find using technology a little bit more difficult. So pretty cool. So he does his paper route for the day, and then Greg and Aaron, they go shopping and they make deliveries around 7 p.m. They take a short break, and they've been working every single day since March, except for Easter Sunday. Every single day they've been doing these deliveries and helping other people around them. So I just thought it was a super cool story to share. He really hopes he can reopen his frame shop later this month. But he wants to continue to help the seniors, and he's actually working now with a Florida-based charity called Love a Senior to start a New Jersey chapter of the organization and get others involved with just this inspiring work. And so he wanted to share his story in hopes to inspire others to become a part of it and just to continue this generous trend. So talk about turning your part-time job into something pretty cool and helpful for so many people. Now, my next story is about a Florida cafe, and an anonymous donor gave them $40,000 to help stay open during the pandemic. But it wasn't just to help them open or keep their doors open. It was another way to thank some of the local healthcare workers. So it was kind of a win-win situation for everybody. So it's called Bill's Cafe in Naples, and it was forced to close due to the stay-at-home orders. And so one of the regular breakfast customers, he went up to the owner, Bill Sally, and he just expressed his intention that he wanted to help. And he says, "Look, I have 2 envelopes for you, one for you, one for your help." And this is what he wanted to do. So he said, basically, the amount of money could help keep your doors open, but the donor asked that if he would be willing to send 100 sandwiches per day to the Naples Community Hospital that was across the street. And of course, the owner jumped at the chance of doing that, so all of the food was given to the hospital's employees for free. The donations were purchased and distributed over the course of a few weeks, and they totaled about $40,000. But he was just super grateful that he was able to keep his door open, keep his employees busy, and help out those healthcare workers in his community, and just all from this anonymous donor that did such an amazing thing. I wanted to share this story because, there's been so many donors and people helping keep each other's door opens, and I love it. It is so cool to see. I just thought this one was extra cool because he made that, extra step to make sure that, keep your doors open and let's help out those healthcare workers and do what we can as well. So pretty cool. The restaurant is open. It was saved. His employees were able to continue to work, and all those healthcare workers got some yummy sandwiches along with the deal. So pretty cool. Now, my next story is about a Florida graduation class and how they received their diplomas. I'm quite jealous I didn't receive my diploma this way, okay? So it's the Somerset Island Prep Charter High School in Key West, and they handed out their diploma to all their graduating students in the open sea on a jet ski. Yes, these graduating students, I'm talking they're wearing cap and gown, gloves and face masks on their jet skis, and their principal was able to pass them their diploma through just kind of like a stick that they were on a boat, literally in the middle of the ocean, and then the students would come by on their jet skis and grab their diploma, reaching out basically from this stick thing that they had to pass a diploma, but on a jet ski. How cool is that, right? So they say that the final ceremony for our seniors represents the same theme that has played out throughout the entirety of their time at Island Prep. That no barrier is too large to overcome, and that through creativity and hard work, we can overcome any challenge. I just thought this was the coolest graduation ceremony that I have read throughout this pandemic. On a jet ski? Come on. Like, that is the perfect way to keep your social distance and have some fun to receive your diploma. I just thought that was so cool. All right, it is time, though, for a little bit of a break. But when we get back, I have so many cool stories to share with you today. I have a lot about some residents that are defending their local communities from riots and looting. I have new proposed legislation in the U.S. House. I have a story about that. I have a story about the Colorado Senate that's voting to sweep Police Accountability Act. There's also a story about school drive. There's just lots to come in today's episode. It's all feel-good, positive stories, so don't go anywhere. I will be right back to share more with you.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello. We are back. Let's get right back into those feel-good, positive stories that I have to share with you today. So my next one is about some Texas residents that defended their local mall after looting was threatened. So this is pretty cool. So this is in Killeen, Texas, and some residents decided to, after they finished a peaceful protest in their town, they basically wanted to help protect their local mall from looting and some riots and stuff. So basically the local police just identified a threat of rioting on social media, and the Killeen Mall management in Central Texas announced the building would be closed to residents until further notice because they just wanted to make sure nothing was going to happen, right? So these residents decided to, try to help their community and defend their local mall. So what happened was, Richard Hicks and Jonathan Hilder, they organized a peaceful protest over the weekend, and, they had a lot of other people join them during this peaceful protest, and together they stepped up to organize a defense of the mall as well to prevent any rioting and looting, and which would otherwise kind of just help, make sure that their town was not experiencing any more negativity and all this stuff that they have been experiencing throughout this whole thing. So he says, we showed everybody that Killeen can do something positive and not be destructive. To have somebody come in and ruin all that for us would have been very counterintuitive to what we were trying to accomplish. So 75 residents joined them to stand and watch all entrances of the mall for a few hours just to make sure that they're discouraging any trouble. Says we were there to hopefully embrace whoever may have been coming to do harm and help them understand why doing things our way was better for everybody. So, yeah, the town has been quite peaceful ever since. They've just had peaceful protests, no looting, no riots, nothing like that. And it's all just because these residents stood by what they believed in and stood by their community and each other to make sure that there was no negative, impact from things that could have put a bad name to it. So they just wanted to show that positivity, show that this community could come together and protect the things that, is important to them, like their local mall. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now there is a new proposed legislation in the U.S. House that would end police doctrine of qualified immunity. So in response to the recent public demand for greater accountability of police officers, a former Libertarian presidential candidate, Michigan Congressman Justin Amish, along with Ayanna Pressley, introduced a bill in the House to end the doctrine of qualified immunity, which makes it so difficult for private citizens to pursue legal recourse against police officers that have violated their rights or those of a loved one. So, as part of the Civil Rights Act of 1871, Congress allowed individuals to sue state and local officials, including police officers, who violate their rights. So this was a joint letter released by Amish and Pressley that was just late this past week. They said, starting in 1967, the Supreme Court began gutting that law by inventing the doctrine of qualified immunity. In the letter that was sent to their colleagues to try and conjure up this support, the pair of lawmakers explained, qualified immunity provides a screen for law-breaking police officers. Under qualified immunity, police are immune from liability unless the person whose rights they violated can show that there is a previous case in the same jurisdiction involving the exact same facts in which a court deemed the actions to be constitutional violation. So in other words, officers would need to commit the same crime twice in order to be prosecuted. This rule was sharply narrowed the situations in which police can be held liable, even for their truly, heinous right violations, and it creates a disincentive to bringing cases in the first place. So it says, if a plaintiff knows that there is no prior case that is identical to theirs, they may decline to even file a lawsuit because they are very unlikely to win. So even if a plaintiff does file a case, a judge may dismiss it on qualified immunity grounds and decline to decide whether the plaintiff's rights were violated, meaning the constitutional precedent still isn't established, and so the next plaintiff still can't recover. So currently controlled by the Democrats, there is a good chance in the House that with just a little bipartisan support, the bill H.R. 7085, it's called, will pass. The Republican-controlled Senate, however, may offer significant opposition as its party platform is normally very pro-police. But if the public response to George Floyd's killing continues with the current level of intensity, then they're saying that their legislation may present a smart way to diffuse tensions and stem the number of such incidences by reversing the policy that says police are legally insulted from consequences after violating the rights of the people whom they have sworn to serve. Now, Colorado lawmakers are pushing for immediate police reform on issues which they have been debating for a long time, quote, a long time. This all came in the wake of George Floyd's death in Minnesota and when the protests followed. So they say the Attorney General's office has been engaged with the sponsors of the criminal justice reform bill to ensure it improves peace officer training, provides greater accountability, and restores trust in law enforcement. So that was the General Phil Weiser spokesman that said that. It was a written statement, according to the Colorado Sun, and the legislation attempts to make police more accountable for violence and other violations of private citizens' constitutional rights. The law would expand the use of body cameras, repeal the right to use deadly force in fleeing felons, mandate a yearly report on use of violence force, and prevent officers with complaints registered against them transferring departments. It would also allow for private citizens to file lawsuits within their own means against officers for breach of constitutional rights for up to $100,000. Other measures include a banning of chokeholds, collection of racial profiling data in enforcement procedures, and objective justification for making stops. The bill introduced in the state of Senate of Colorado that was just this last Wednesday has made it out of the committee and will soon arrive on the floor of the state chamber for a vote, with about a week left in the current session. So they want to find a middle ground. So according to the Denver Post, representatives from the Colorado District Attorney's Council, the Fraternal Order of Police, and some sheriffs expressed both support for the legislation and concern that it was moving too fast and that it was too broad. So the fear, according to this post, is that the kind, law-abiding officers will be dissuaded from signing up for the fear of having to pay such large legal fees. Now, sponsors of the bill, which is supported by every Democratic representative, believe time has run out for trying to iron out much of these measures are gutting of the police and how much is lawful, necessary reform. They believe that time is now to pass the legislation. This is not a new conversation. Many of my colleagues have been talking about various aspects of police reform for years. And quite frankly, it is a travesty that it takes such a catastrophe that's happening across the United States and in many of our own backyards for this legislation to happen. So that was the Senate President Leroy Garcia, a Democrat and co-sponsor of the bill, says, why would we not want greater accountability or transparency in your police department? We haven't done enough soon enough. So the Democratic bill sponsors agreed to make some amendments to the bill after it has entered the committee. And the Representative Leslie Harrod of Denver said after the vote that she was pleased that the changes agreed on don't water down the bill or alter its intent. So super good news there. I just had to share that information with you. There is things that are happening. There is movement. There is bills being passed. There is the lawmakers that are trying to make the right moves right now for everybody and try to get those bills passed that need to be passed. So it's kind of just a waiting game from here, but I wanted to share with you just a couple of those stories of what people are doing to try to better the situation, to try to move forward, and to try to pass those bills that do need to be passed. But it's just a matter of time of us to kind of wait and see what happens. But I'm sure I will be updating you when those great bills do get passed and that we can kind of, feel that positivity from that. But it is time for another break. But when we get back from the break, I have some cool stories to finish off today's episode, including a story actually about the U.S. unemployment rate. It is a positive story, so stay tuned for that. We will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello. Okay, we are back. We are on the last stretch of today's episode, and I have a few more stories to share with you that'll definitely add some positivity in your day. So, a Minneapolis middle school decided that they wanted to hold a food drive in order to help out a looted community, and they expected, a modest turnout, but the turnout that they got was just above and beyond what they could have ever imagined. So, there was thousands of donations that were far beyond the 100 grocery bags this school had hoped to collect when they first published their appeal on social media. And it was shared so widely that some of the donors even came from out of state, which is pretty cool. Just the power of social media, right? It just does so many things. So, the middle school principal, Amy Nelson, says, donations covered every inch of ground of our parking lot, the grass, everywhere. We had to also use neighboring park because we didn't have enough space here at the school to stack it up. Pretty amazing, right? So the school community initially wanted to help its own families because they lived in neighborhoods where grocery stores had been closed due to the damage from the protests. So Amy says the line of cars bringing donations went for blocks and blocks in every direction from the school, and they just kept going. We still don't know how much we actually received. So when the word spread of the amazing haul of food that the school had taken in, hundreds of families visited the school just seeking support, and they got that support with all these donations. Such a cool thing. So now, they say, thanks to the generosity of so many, the volunteers from the school are working with the food support nonprofit, the Sheridan Story, to get the donations out to those in need within the greater Minneapolis community. Parents, students, and staff who hadn't seen each other in months were among the many volunteers when they asked, what it all meant. The principal, Amy Nelson, said she could barely contain her pride. She said, first with the pandemic, just to see some of my students and parents, and then to see them come together to do such good. It was just so heartwarming in such a way. I think there's no way to describe that feeling. That is a lot of donations, people coming together in a community. I love seeing it. Now, my next story is pretty interesting as well. So a nurse has finally located the NYC firefighter who pulled her from a burning building 37 years ago. And this is all thanks to the coronavirus. Yes, thanks to coronavirus. Not something you hear quite often. But it says, she said it was just another day at the office for this New York City firefighter. He rescued a 4-year-old girl from a burning apartment building. And now, 37 years later, he was just learning about that huge difference that he actually made that day. So, after the fire, this was 1983, DeAudrey Taylor, the family moved away from New York, and as the decades passed, there was hope that she wanted to meet and thank her rescuer that, grew more remote. Just with the distance, she just wanted to meet this person and be able to thank him for what he did. So she tried to call him online over years, but there was no success. So I didn't know if he was still alive, particularly after September 11th. Part of me thought I waited too long to track him down. So she is a nurse today, living with her husband and children in Virginia, and she decided to pay it forward recently in New York City and returning to saving some lives on the front lines of the pandemic. And because she did that, she finally found the man who saved her life. His name is Eugene, and she brought along a newspaper clipping about the fire in 1983, which is a picture of Eugene from the ladder company 20 holding this little girl in his arms, and the headline reads, "Fireman Braves Flames and Rescues 4-Year-Old Girl." Pretty cool, right? So 2 weeks ago, she was just working the evening shift at the hospital when a group of firefighters paid a visit to thank all the healthcare workers. So she decided to ask them if they knew of the man in the photo. So one of them answered, "Oh, Gene, I know Gene. I've got his number in my phone." An hour later, she received a call from him, learned that he had never forgotten about her. He says, it's been on my wall for 25 years, that newspaper clipping. So now he is 75 years old. He says that he remembers that day vividly. He says, "I didn't even have gear on. I had a helmet and an axe." Which is just crazy. So she pleaded with him to save her baby as well, because DeAudrey's mother he basically saved DeAudrey's mother's first, and then she was pleading, "Please save my daughter." The crews brought the mother to safety, and then he found DeAudrey herself a few minutes later. And so, because DeAudrey saves lives from the virus, she just says that she can't see Eugene in person, right? But they had promised to meet as soon as it was safe. And in the meantime, they are counting their blessings of just to both be alive and safe. And it's just kind of cool that they connect and they both save lives now. And he saved her life. I just thought it was such a cool, unique story, especially how the coronavirus brought them together. So eventually they will be meeting in person whenever it is safe to do so, but she's just super excited that she found him, and through the coronavirus of all things. She says, "I always knew I came close to losing my life that day. Without him, I wouldn't be here. I had a second chance at life thanks to him." So pretty cool story I had to share with you. Now, for my last one that I want to share with you today, it is about the U.S. unemployment rate. I know that sounds scary, but the U.S. unemployment rate has declined as 2.5 million workers are returning to work. As we know, of course, the coronavirus has made so many people out of jobs. Everybody is trying to make ends meet and figure out a way to, get back to work. So as guidelines are starting to, or restrictions are starting to ease up a little bit, and there's some new guidelines that are put in place, more people are able to go back to work, which is extremely exciting for obviously so many different reasons. Getting back to that regular schedule, making money again, getting our economy to start going, all these things are necessities. So the economists were quite pleased that their more dire forecasts were actually wrong, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, issued an encouraging report for the month of May. So the latest BLS report on U.S. job loss showed the grim unemployment numbers actually fell after 2.5 million employees were able to return to work in the leisure and hospitality, construction, education, and health services and retail industries. Yes, 2.5 million employees were able to go back to work. That is something to celebrate, I have to say. So these economists originally anticipated jobless numbers to top 20% in May, but the total now is estimated by the officials in the BLM fell to an estimated 16.3%. So a lot better than they originally thought. Regardless of the percentage of employment population being worse than the Great Depression, the report is a welcome decline, and it is largely credited to social restrictions being steadily rolled back across the U.S. So I hope maybe you are one of those people that got to go back to work, one of the 2.5 million workers able to return back to their jobs right now, which is just super exciting. Things are starting to get rolling. Restrictions are starting to lift up. But please always remember to keep safe as you can, so that we can continue to go back to work and we can continue to start to try to get back to life the way that we used to know it. Even though we don't know it quite that way anymore, we will get back to a normal. It might just be a new normal. It might be a little bit of a difference, but that is okay. Good things are still yet to come, and that is why I am here to always be sharing with you positive, feel-good stories, and honestly, it is the best part of my day. I have to thank all my listeners and this podcast so much, because it has brought me such positivity in these chaotic times. So I hope it brings you much positivity and happiness as it has me throughout this crazy chaos. And I'm still going to be here to continue to bring you that positivity and that feel-good stories to hopefully better your day, because that is exactly what I'm here to do. Now, that is all the stories I have for you today. I will stop rambling on about how much I love doing this podcast, and I will leave you with thanking you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. You have no idea how much I appreciate you being here. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button. You will be notified every single time of a new episode. Like and follow us on social media. I update those regularly with new news stories or upcoming episodes, little teasers or feel-good quotes, things that will bring you some more positivity in your life. And then, as always, too, please do not forget to leave a 5-star review. It helps out a ton, and I absolutely love looking at the reviews and comments. So please do not be shy and leave a review. It is greatly appreciated. Well, I'm going to leave you today with, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, an amazing rest of your week. Remember to always pay it forward every single time you can, and spread kindness around every corner you turn, every chance you get. Because that's exactly what we need in our world right now. It's just a little bit of extra kindness and to bring some positivity to everybody's life. Well, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to sharing more feel-good stories with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.